transcripts. Muhammad Amin. Oh, someone put it on the desk. Yes. Huh? No. Yes, free. Hadith disciple. Hadith disciple.
How is set up? It's a live streaming now.
Yes. I believe so. Someone did it for me, but I believe so. But it's simple. No. Where did it go? Aziz.
YouTuber. والله magacaas noo qoraa live wajida live
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We ask all of the mashayikh, please be silent for the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And bi'idhnillah, all of you mashayikh, inshallah. Bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he told Jarir, he says, Istansit al-Nas. He was in Mecca, the conquest of Mecca. He says, Istansit al-Nas. He says, tell the people to remain silent. Tell the people to listen. لا ترجعوا كفارا بعضي أو بعدي يضرب بعضكم رقاب بعض. He says, don't revert back to kufr when I go, killing each other and fighting each other. What we take from this hadith is what? Is that when knowledge is being disseminated, especially what the Prophet ﷺ is saying, even if it's one sentence, as it's in that hadith, that we should do what? We should listen. We should listen. One sentence. How about if somebody's giving you 10 hadiths, 20 hadiths, 30 hadiths? One hadith is worthy of you to do what? La tarfa'u, fawqa sawt. Don't raise your voice over the Prophet ﷺ's voice. In this hadith, as if it was his actual, if he was in front of you physically. So this is the respect that we give to the athar of the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. And all of you know this already. You all know this, but we all need to remind each other. We all need what? Remind each other. You all know this already. Alhamdulillah. Your teachers, they teach you this. To be quiet and to give respect for ilm. Whether it's the Quran, or whether it's hadith, or anything of beneficial Islamic knowledge, your teachers have taught you to be silent. However, people, they forget. Khairan, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. Jazakumullahu khairan. Abdul Aziz, strategy work or? Strategy good? Alhamdulillah. طيب.
Hey, منذ.
خلاص?
خلاص.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, let's get started. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Salatu wassalam ala khayri khalqillah. نبينا وإمامنا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وصحبه أما بعد. بسم الله اقرأ على بركة الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. باب فضائل أصحاب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. ومن صحب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أو راه من المسلمين فهو من أصحابه. حدثنا علي بن عبد الله حدثنا سفيان بن عمرو وقال سمعت جابر بن عبد الله رضي الله عنهما يقول حدثنا أبو سعيد الخدري رضي الله عنه قال أبو سعيد الخدري قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يأتي على الناس زمان فيغزو فئام من الناس فيقولون فيكم من صاحب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فيقولون نعم فيفتح لهم ثم يأتي على الناس زمان فيغزو فئام من الناس فيقال هل فيكم من صاحب أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فيقولون نعم فيفتح لهم ثم يأتي على الناس زمان فيغزو فئام من الناس فيقال هل فيكم من صاحب أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فيقولون نعم فيفتح لهم.
The first hadith in the chapter, or before the hadith, and we don't have a lot of time, obviously. It's going to be very difficult for us to finish this entire chapter, rather these pages that we've printed. However, مَا لَا يُدْرَكُ كُلُّهُ لَا يُتْرَكُ جُلُّهُ. If you can't do it all, you do some. بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى. Hopefully what we can do, inshallah, is be the first few drops of rain that will turn into a torrential storm when I leave. You brothers and sisters pick up Sahih Bukhari, read and study yourselves. I can give you just a few basic instructions. بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى. Imam al-Bukhari's book, as we said yesterday, is not a book just of hadith. It is not a book of hadith, but it is a book of all of the sciences of al-Islam. And from what Imam al-Bukhari puts in his book is his views, his opinions, his madhab, what he feels on a situation. Whether it's an issue of creed, aqidah, whether it's an issue of fiqh, whether it is concerning the tarikh of Islam and the seerah, the Prophet ﷺ's battles, etc. Imam al-Bukhari will put his view. What I feel, what I believe was correct to me, sometimes he puts in the chapter heading before the actual hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Or sometimes he'll put in the chapter heading a statement of one of the Sahaba. Or sometimes some statements of many of the Tabi'een. He will put them in the bab. Sometimes he makes the bab a hadith that is not necessarily authentic. And then he goes on and proves what is authentic. So in this chapter he says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Babu Fadaili Ashab al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَمَنْ صَحِبَ النَّبِي صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ وَرَآهُ مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ فَهُوَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِهِ. He doesn't mention a hadith yet. He says, وَمَنْ صَحِبَ النَّبِيَّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ أَوْ رَآهُ مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ فَهُوَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِهِ. He gives you the definition of a sahabi, who is a companion. He says, first and foremost, those who actually accompanied the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, who are with the Prophet ﷺ. And this is the specific type of suhbah. A companion, like Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, his companion, my friend. This is my companion. Not a brother that I met yesterday, but my companion, someone that I'm with. Because whenever you call someone your companion, in your custom and in your culture, it means somebody that you know well. They know you well. You've traveled. You've done business. You've been through things with this person. It's my companion. That's the first level of the Sahaba. He then says, أَوْ رَآهُ, or those who saw him, i.e. the general concept of the Islamic suhbah. In other words, someone who met him only one day, 1 hour, 5 minutes. Hajjat al-Wada'. He met him. He fought in a battle. The Prophet did not know the man by name. They did not sit, eat, and drink together. He didn't fight with him. He didn't narrate a hadith from him. But he met him just once. Min al-Muslimin. From those who were believers. Those who met him and they had accepted Islam. They were not mushrikeen. They were not Yahud. They were not Christians. They were not munafiqeen. They had actually believed. فَهُوَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِهِ. Then he or she, they're from his ashab. Even though they only met him for 5 minutes. Even though they only met him for 1 minute. Even though they physically got with the Prophet ﷺ, and that's it. No words were exchanged, no handshakes were given. And this shows us the special, unique character of the Prophet ﷺ. This miraculous thing. If someone is considered to be his friend and his companion, even though he only met him 1 time. So this is the madhab of Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah. And the reason why he said this is because there's some of the ulama who say a person cannot be a sahabi until he fights with the Prophet at least once, until he narrates one or two hadiths from him, until some time goes by and he's in the company of the Rasul then he's from the Sahaba. That was not the view of Imam al-Bukhari. Imam al-Bukhari says one or two things. One or two things. Number one, those who accompanied the Prophet ﷺ, they were there, whether it was the first days of Mecca, the early days of Medina. They came, they made hijrah, they lived with the Prophet, they studied with the Prophet, they fought with the Prophet. Everybody understand this? And if not, then at least someone who what? Who saw the Nabi al-Karim walau lahza, even if it's for one brief, quick second. The third restriction or condition, he says, min al-Muslimin, from the Muslims. In other words, there were people who met the Prophet ﷺ and they had not yet accepted Islam. They left the company of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. They went back to their tribes, their countries, their villages, or wherever they lived, wherever they resided, and then they accepted Islam. Then Allah put faith into their hearts, and they never got a chance to meet the Prophet ﷺ a second time. They are not considered from the Sahaba according to Imam al-Bukhari. Rather, he had to have met the Rasul as a mu'min. Everybody understand this? These people, he says, فَهُوَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِهِ, then he and also she, they are from his Sahaba. In other words, all of the rulings of the Sahaba that we explained last summer. What we say about them, what we think about them, how we deal with the narrations, going to Jannah, they're all trustworthy, reputable, equitable narrators, applies to that man or applies to that woman. Even if it was for 1 second, 1 minute. Everybody clear on this? Everybody understand this? So this is the madhab of Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah. Other ulama, they may not necessarily agree with this. They may have other conditions for a person to be considered from the Sahaba. And some people, they may give additions, ziyadat, such as that he died upon Islam. She died upon Islam. In other words, there may have been a person who met the Prophet ﷺ as a believer, and then they migrated, they went to another place, another country, and the wars that took place, and that person may have went back to kufr, waliyadu billah. They may have made apostasy, they were forsaken by Allah, Allah abandoned them, and they died as kuffar. They are not from the Sahaba, radiyallahu ta'ala. Another concept is those who met the Prophet ﷺ as believers. They left his company, and let's say, for example, he may have apostated to kufr, but before he died, Allah Azza wa Jal wanted good for him, and he returned back to the deen, he returned back to Islam, and he died upon La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. He's still from his what? فَهُوَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِهِ. Are we clear on this? Another issue of study with regards to this chapter heading, those who saw the Prophet ﷺ from other than the human beings. Can someone be from the Sahaba who's jinni, who's from the jinn, not from Bani Adam? The angels, from the Malaika, can they be from his Sahaba as well? Imam al-Bukhari, he says, men. He says, he who, she who, those who. So these are all sub-genres of study of this chapter header, this chapter heading. Last summer, we gave you one opinion, one view. Those who met the Prophet ﷺ as believers. They saw him, they met him. Not even saw him, they may have been blind. They encountered the Prophet ﷺ for a short period of time and died upon Islam. They're from the Sahaba. Despite the different ranks, the different levels, despite the different degrees of suhbah. Obviously, the 10 promised Jannah are not like those who weren't. The Shaykhain are not like the Khulafa al-Arba. The levels. And we explained all of this what? Last summer. We explained all of this in detail last summer. So we don't want to waste more time reiterating all of these points. So this is the first concept of this chapter heading. And this is very beneficial, brothers and sisters. Get everyone's attention, inshallah, everyone's respect, is that what? When you read Sahih Bukhari, it's not like Sahih Muslim. When you read Sahih Bukhari, it's not like other books. Imam al-Bukhari's book is special. And if you don't have some basic techniques, some basic tools, either you're going to be confused, you're going to be lost, or at best, you're going to get minimum benefit. But you'll have to know how to tackle Imam al-Bukhari's book. It's not just a book of athar, but it's a book of fiqh. It's a book of his madhab. And he supports his madhab with the ahadith and the athar. Everybody understand this? So when you read Sahih Bukhari, you find some chapters in which there may not be no hadith therein. You may find some chapters in which he mentions what Zuhri did and Ibrahim al-Nakha'i did. And these people are not the Sahaba of the Messenger of Allah. Rather, bal, we say, some chapters in Sahih Bukhari, he may mention what some of the previous prophets did to prove his madhab. A brief example of this is taking a ghusl, being naked. Is it permissible to wash when a person is unclothed? Or do you have to wash with an izar on? Do you have to wash with a robe on? You can never ever be undressed. Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, he supports his madhab of the permissibility of doing it without clothes on with two stories of previous prophets, of Ayub and Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. So those who study fiqh and those who study usul al-fiqh, they can never ever do without the book of Imam al-Bukhari. Because min al-adil al-mukhtalaf fiha, from the proofs and evidences over which the usuliyin differ, is shar'u man qablana. Shar'u man qablana. The legislation of those who came before us is what Musa alayhi salam did, and Allah acknowledged it. He mentioned it in the Quran. Can we now take it as dalil, or only from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's legislation? Everybody understand this? Now, obviously, we have a mixed crowd. We have a what? We have a mixed crowd. We have older brothers and sisters. We have younger brothers and sisters. We have people that are tulab al-ilm, yani real hardcore. We have people that are sitting for the dhikr, sitting for the benefit. So we have a mixed crowd. So some of these fawaid that we want to give are for special people. Those that don't get them, those that can't understand them, we say malish. It's unfair to deprive everyone from the jewels and the gems. And some other things are going to be basic and simple. But if you are a talib of hadith, a talib of fiqh, you study usul al-fiqh, Imam al-Bukhari's book is considered to be a rich pasture for these issues. Is the dalil, can dalil be those people who came before us or not? You say Al-Amidi said, Imam al-Haramain said, Fulan said, Al-Baqillani said, وَقَالَ بِهِ الْبُخَارِ. And it's also the madhab of Imam al-Bukhari. Shar'u man qablana is a hujjah for us. Everybody understand this? This is bikhtisar, taban. This is in brief. So this is one of the ways that you study Sahih Bukhari. So if you're reading Kitab al-Tahara, if you're reading Kitab al-Salah, if you're reading Kitab Fadail al-Madina, you understand how to take his views. Everybody understand this is a template. And better than that, you can take the template and you can use it for any other chapter in Sahih al-Bukhari. Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, he then says, mentioning the first hadith, and it's a very, very long discussion on who is considered to be a Sahabi. We gave you the khalasa last year and gave you a little more this time. And that's all we're going to give right now. He then says, حدثنا علي بن عبد الله قال حدثنا سفيان عن عمرو قال سمعت جابر بن عبد الله رضي الله عنهما يقول حدثنا أبو سعيد الخدري قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يأتي على الناس زمان فيغزو فئام من الناس فيقولون فيكم من صاحب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فيقولون نعم فيفتح لهم ثم يأتي على الناس زمان فيغزو فئام من الناس فيقال هل فيكم من صاحب أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فيقولون نعم فيفتح لهم ثم يأتي على الناس زمان فيغزو فئام من الناس فيقال هل فيكم من صاحب أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فيقولون نعم فيفتح لهم. The very first hadith, Imam al-Bukhari, he says حدثنا. He says that someone told us, someone related to us. In other words, Imam al-Bukhari in most cases was sitting like one of you are sitting, Muhammad Amin. You're Imam al-Bukhari, and I am Ali ibn Abdullah. Whether I'm reading from my notes, whether I'm reading from my memory, whether I allow you to dictate or not, I tell you something, and you write it down, you put it in your notes, or you yourself, you memorize it. You would say, حدثنا Ali ibn Abdullah. Ali ibn Abdullah told who? Us. If it was just me and him, he would say what? حدثني. He told me. Everybody understand this? And other ulama, they make a difference between حدثنا and أخبرنا. The different sigha of at-tahammul. What's the difference between أخبرنا and حدثنا? Imam al-Bukhari sees that they're the same, they're equal. أخبرنا حدثنا شيء واحد. So he says, حدثنا Ali ibn Abdullah. This man, Ali, the son of Abdullah, he is the teacher of Imam al-Bukhari. Imam al-Bukhari was sitting with his fellow colleagues, and Ali ibn Abdullah was giving them the narration. Everybody clear on this? So the Sheikh of Imam al-Bukhari is who? Ali ibn Abdullah. And this is something that we explained last year as well. The two main components of hadith. We have sanad and we have a matan. We have a sanad and a matan. We have an isnad and we have the matan. The isnad, the sanad, is the chain of reporters. The matan is the thing that is being reported. The thing that is being mentioned. He told us kada wa kada. Fulan told us so on and so forth. Fulan gave us so on and so forth. So then you tell someone, and a third, and a fourth, and then it reaches a general source. It reaches a general source. The witness spoke to the detective spoke to the reporter puts it to the editor, and it goes into the newspaper. So the newspaper is like Sahih Bukhari. And the editor, he who wrote the story, he who edited the story, the detective, the witness, that's the isnad. The crime or whatever happened, that's the matan. That is the what? That's the actual thing that's being reported. So in this isnad, Imam al-Bukhari says, Hadathana Ali ibn Abdullah. So if you had to do a book report on Imam al-Bukhari, and they asked you, who are Imam al-Bukhari's teachers? Who are his shuyukh? He says, I don't know. But I did go into the summer of learning, the fourth annual summer of learning, and we read this hadith. This man, Ali ibn Abdullah, you know for sure is from his shuyukh, from his teachers. Whether Imam al-Bukhari met him once, twice, or 20 times, whether he gave him ijazah, whether he studied with him for 10 years, I don't know him, if he met him one time and took one piece of information from him, then he's from his teachers. And this man, Ali ibn Abdullah, is well known as Ibn al-Madini, rahimahullah ta'ala. And he was from the close friends and companions of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah. Imam al-Bukhari, he met this man and he studied with him. And he said, even though Imam al-Bukhari met all of those mountains of knowledge, Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah, his second home was Baghdad. When they asked him, he says, I went to Sham, I went to the Hijaz, I went there to study Ray, Fulan, this place and that place. I went to the different regions of Iraq. He says, وَأَمَّا بَغْدَادْ فَنَسِيتُ. He says, I forgot how many times I went in and out of Baghdad. So all of those great ulama that Imam al-Bukhari, he said, he met with, this man here was special. And he said about Ali ibn Abdullah, مَسْتَصْغَرْتُ نَفْسِي عِنْدَ أَحَدٍ إِلَّا عِنْدَ عَلِي. He says, all of those mountains of knowledge that I met, I never deemed myself to be inferior and to be less, except for this one right here. So it shows the great status of Ali ibn Abdullah al-Madini, rahimahullah ta'ala. And this also goes to show, as we mentioned yesterday, from the reasons behind Imam al-Bukhari's success is that he was brave and courageous. He wasn't afraid, he wasn't a coward, he wasn't inferior. He studied, he benefited, but he never looked down upon himself. Everybody understand this? He never looked down upon himself, he never scorned himself, except for in front of this man. So how can you be a student of knowledge and you have an inferiority complex? How can you be a student of knowledge and you're afraid and you're scared? How can you be a student of knowledge and you're worried about this one and that one? You cannot succeed in this business of it, let alone hadith, unless you're rough and tough, unless you have heart and courage, unless you have a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why many of the ulama of the past, they said, such as Az-Zuhri and al-Bukhari himself, al-hadith dhakarun, la yuhibbu illa dhukranu rijal. He says that hadith is masculine, it's male, it's not a female. He says, and no one loves hadith except for masculine men. In other words, you can't be soft. You can't be soft seeking hadith. You can't be weak and afraid. If you get a splinter or a scratch, if someone says something about you, you just quit. And the same applies to women as well. Those great ulama of hadith that were women, they were strong and they were rough and they were tough. Tougher than some men. Hadith is not a science that you can study with comfort. Sit back and relax. Hadith takes sacrifice. And as Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, those who are afraid, those who are worried about their throats being clean and their bellies being full, la yasluhu li hadha shay'. He says, he is totally unsuited for this job. If you're worried about being pretty, cute, if you're worried about being comfortable, he says, then go learn something else. You study fiqh, study usul, study this, don't study hadith. So therefore, this is the first person in the isnad, Ali ibn Abdullah, who's known as Ibn al-Madini, rahimahullah. He then says, after that, Hadathana Sufyan. He says, reported to us is Sufyan. And what's meant by Sufyan is Sufyan ibn Uyayna, the famous alim, Sufyan ibn Uyayna, who was one of the teachers of Ibn al-Madini. Moving forward, he then says, An Amrin, narrated to us Amr. Now I have two questions, or one question about two people. The first question is, you see here that we're reading, there's no explanation, I'm reading from what you're reading in. How do I know who Sufyan is? How do I know who Amr is? We know that Ali is the son of Abdullah. So there's a better clue. When you read a chain of narration, how do you know who's who and what's what? How many narrators have the name Sufyan? How many narrators have the name Amr? We all know in the Arabic language and Arabic or Arabian culture, Amr is like John, Tim. It's a household name. They say Bakr wa Amr, Zayd wa Bakr. Who is Amr? In the sciences of hadith, this is called al-muhmal. Al-muhmal. Not mubham, but muhmal. What's meant is a man or woman whose name is mentioned without a last name, without being ascribed or attributed to anyone else. Hadathana Muhammad. Hadathana Ali. Manhu. Arift? It's called muhmal. And how do we know who's who and what's what? Thiqa, am ghayr thiqa, sami'a mimman faqo, am lam yasma'. We know from several different ways. The first is al-tabaqa, is the level of the chain of narration. Anytime the Sufyan after Ali ibn Abdullah, it's going to be one Sufyan. And we also know min al-talamid wa shuyukh, who is the teacher of Ibn al-Madini, who is the student of Sufyan. And last but not least, the usloob of the book. We ran out of time? خلاص إن شاء الله. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا.
Hello, Ikhwani. After the last dubs today, there will be certificates for all those that participated in this Dora. So inshallah, stick around, don't leave, and then you'll get your certificates inshallah, okay? And that dubs will be after Sheikh Maulid inshallah, so it will be the last dubs, and everyone that participated, you guys will inshallah get a certificate after, inshallah, after Sheikh Maulid. Huh? Everyone that participated in this Dora, so don't go anywhere, okay? Don't worry.
Hamid, Mufti, can you lock this in place?
It's a way, but I don't.
Okay. All right, good enough. So nobody touched it.
Yeah, no, it's supposed to be in there tighter, but I haven't figured it out. See, I had to fight to get it in. That's what they say.
Let's quiet down, guys. Stick. Ya Allah, stick. Ya خلاص. خف الله يعاركم. السلام عليكم. السلام عليكم. ويلش وما تنتهين سواء مسنتهين. لا نروح كريتينا إني أم صار. استاج عليك. استاج ها قفك هلا واستجينا. قفك استوى هلا واستجينا. شيخ أنا هرفض اليوم كتابك على آخر ربع ضدك ويا مسيحين ماشى فدينا والمساجد وأنا فوق يسار. هكذا وحصل هيك الأول. Who does that? Who? موسى. ضد إبليس كان يدي حطها.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله ومن تمسك بهديه أما بعد. Who can remind us what we just spoke on and what we spoke on yesterday in 2 minutes? 2 minutes. من يذكرنا؟ تفضل. Quickly. Teachers of Imam Bukhari, like who? Ali ibn Abdullah. What was his famous name? Ibn Medina. Ascent. Very good. Very good job. What else? What else did we mention? Quickly. Todo.
He told us some about like the guys that had told us what he told.
The Isnad. The reporters. He heard it from him. I heard it from him. You heard it from me. The reporters. The Senate. Very good job. What else? Todo. People that the Prophet ﷺ used to speak to. Right. What else did we mention? Todo. Huh? What the people of Hadith have to go through, the life cycle, the difficulty, the sacrifice. Ascent. Very good. What else? Todo. The Sahabi. Who is a Sahabi? How does a person become from the Sahaba? What else did we speak on? What else did we talk about? Todo.
What classes did he used to take?
What classes you used to take? What else? Father Muhammad Amin. Sahih Bukhari is not just a book of hadith, it's a book of everything that you want or need regarding the Islamic sciences. Hadith is a book of what? Kulli shay, everything. Right? What else do we speak about? Quickly, we're running out of time. لا ليس من المشايخ من الطلبة فقط. الحمد لله. Right, what else? What else did we mention? Tfadl. You need to be brave and courageous to be a student of hadith. You can't be afraid. You can't be scared. Tfadl. Imam Bukhari, he struggled. He went through many things. Right? We mentioned that very briefly. And if you read the biography of Imam Bukhari, you may come across a story that make you cry. What happened to him? Especially towards the end of his life, how he died, how a man of such great stature died the life that he died, the death in which he died. Khayr inshallah. Anything else before we stop, before we get started? Anything else? We have a hand up. Yes or no? Alas? Fadl.
How did he
Right, one of the ulama of hadith, he became sick because he didn't have any shoes to walk when it was very hot, to walk when it was very cold. And there are many stories like this. The struggles and the sacrifices that students of knowledge must go through in general, and especially the students of hadith. Khayr inshallah, let's get started. The next narrator in the chain is a man whose name is Amr. Now we explained that this is one of the sciences of hadith, and which we call this what? Al-Muhmal. من الطرق التي نتميز ونعرف ونفرق بين هذا وذا وهو في الطبقات. وكمان الطبقة وبعد الطبقة الطريقة الثانية تلاميذ وشيوخ. الطريقة الثالثة التعرف على منهج المؤلف صاحب الكتاب. طريقة رابعة بالبلدان وفي قرآن أخرى. هذه ذكرناها على وجه الإيجاز والاختصار. خير إن شاء الله. So obviously we're going to run out of time again, and even though we're not going to finish the entire chapter or the pages, we want to cover at least a few hadith بإذن الله. At least على الأقل, at least a few hadith. Amr here is Amr ibn Dinar al-Makki. Amr ibn Dinar al-Makki, from the great ulama of hadith of Hijaz. And he is the student of who? He says, Sami'tu, I heard Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu anhuma. That's his teacher. So very briefly, Imam al-Bukhari's teacher is who? Ali. Right. Ali's teacher is who? Sufyan. Sufyan's teacher is who? Amr. Amr's teacher is who? Jabir, the son of Abdullah. Jabir radiallahu anhuma is a companion, the son of a companion. We all know the story, famous story. He didn't narrate this hadith from the Prophet directly. Rather, he narrated from another sahabi, another companion. And this companion, his name is Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So we have that which is called Anwa' Ulum al-Hadith. types of hadith sciences. The narrators' names, their nicknames, their by names, Al-Fulan, Abu Fulan, Fulan, Al-Fulani. We have the different tribes and clans, the families. And we also have which is called Al-Taif al-Isnad, which means the subtle benefits, the subtleties of the chain of narration. In this Isnad, we have Riwayat al-Sahabi al-Sahabi. One companion is narrating from another companion. And this teaches us and this shows us humility, to be humble. And there's nothing wrong from taking knowledge from someone who's similar to you or someone who's less than you are. As many of the pious predecessors said, لا ينظر الرجل حتى يأخذ عمن هو فوقه وعمن هو مثله وعمن هو دونه. He says a man will not excel. You won't go far until you do the three things. Take from those who are above you, those who are equal to you, and those who are beneath you. And the fa'idah is taken from anyone. Anybody you can take the fa'idah from, as long as it's a fa'idah. Haqq is the possession of the believer. When he finds it, he takes it, no matter where it is. So you cannot become a master in ilm and hadith until you lose color, age, gender, and background. These things, these barriers, they do not exist to Ahlul Hadith. There is no such thing as black, white, orange, yellow, and red. There's no such thing as young and old. There's no such thing as man and woman. There's no such thing as this tribe and that tribe, this family and that family. These things do not exist to the ulama of hadith. And the only thing that exists to them is the fa'idah. Who can give me the fa'idah? Everybody understand this? So Jabir ibn Abdullah, who heard from the Prophet ﷺ, who met the Prophet ﷺ, who studied with the Rasul ﷺ, rather, there are times in which he narrated things with just him and the Prophet, nobody else. He still kept the aman and he said, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, he gave it to me, another Sahabi. Everybody understand this? And then we have another, the Taif al-Isnad is Abu Sa'id. That's not his name. His name is not Abu Sa'id. That's his kunya. His kunya, Abu Abdul Rahman, Abu Abdullah, Abu Ahmad, Abu Aisha, Abu Dujana, Abu Fulan. So Abu Sa'id, he was well known by his kunya, just like many other companions were well known by their kunyas, such as who? Abu Bakr, Ahsant. Exactly. Or Abu Hurairah, or Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, Ahsant. Or لا غير مشهور. Or who else? Abu Ubaidah, Ahsant. Or it's more. Al-Muhim, we understand the point. Khair, inshallah. So Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu, he narrated that the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, and before we get into the hadith in detail, piece by piece, we say that the main lesson from this first hadith is what? What's the main lesson from this hadith? The Prophet, he tells us, he says, a time will come, he says, in which a people will go out and fight. They will go out and fight, yani in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They go out for jihad fi sabilillah. And someone will ask them, is it one of their enemies? Someone from their army? Someone that they pass by? Al-Muhim, someone will ask them. It will be said to them, Fikum, do you have anybody who was a Sahabi from among you? Someone who's with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu? They will respond in the positive, yes. فَيُفْتَحُ لَهُمْ, victory will be given to them. Then time will go by, and another party, another group will go out and fight in Allah's cause. And the same question will be said to them. Is there among you someone who was a student of the companions of the Messenger of Allah? They will say what? Yes. And then it's mentioned the third and final time. There's another version of this hadith outside of Sahih Bukhari that states that it will be said to them, no. To keep things short and brief, the main point from this hadith is what? What's the main point? What's the main fa'idah from this hadith? The main lesson. The main lesson from this hadith is what? Not the main lesson. It's not the main lesson. The main lesson, the main lesson is what? It's not the main lesson. The main lesson from the hadith is what? The main point from this hadith is the virtue of the Sahaba, the virtue of the companions in general, not the virtue of the Ansar, not the virtues of the Muhajirin, not the virtues of the 10, not the virtues of the Shaykhain, not the virtues of the Nisa, not the virtues of Bilal, but the virtue of the Sahaba in general. Those who fought, those who didn't fight. Those who were there from day one, as-Sabiqeen al-Awwalin, those who came later on. Those who accepted Islam after the conquest of Mecca, Hudaybiyah, the Nuqaba, the Sahaba. Everybody clear on this? Everybody clear on this? Now, before we move any further, we say that Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah, he said, فَضَائِلُ أَصْحَابِ النَّبِي sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the virtues of the companions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then, he didn't mention a hadith to support his view about that they are virtuous people. But he gave you a technicality. He spoke on who the Sahaba were. And this is another key in studying Sahih al-Bukhari and studying any book of hadith or fiqh. And that is that a teacher can give you a side benefit. It's not the main benefit, but it's something that you're going to eventually need. It's something that you may possibly need. It is something that helps you out. And in most cases, you're going to come across that need in that issue. Let's make an example of this. When the Prophet ﷺ was asked, Abu Hurairah narrated, the man came to the Prophet ﷺ complaining, seeking fatwa, seeking guidance. He said, Ya Rasulullah, he says, O Messenger of Allah, inna qawmun narkub al-bahr. We travel by sea, we're seamen. وَنَحْمِلُ مَعْنًا قَلِيلًا مِنَ الْمَاءِ. But we only take a little bit of fresh water with us. We have goods, we have merchandise, we have other things that we need, food. We can't take a ton of water on the boat. فَإِنْتَوَضَّعْنَا بِهِ عَطِشْنَا. If we use the fresh water for wudu, we'll go thirsty. Because they can't drink seawater. It's salty. It isn't something that you can drink. It isn't pleasant to drink. So what should we do? أَفَنَتَوَضَّعُ بِمَاءِ الْبَحْرِ. Can we make wudu with seawater? What did the Prophet ﷺ say? He didn't say yes. No, he never said yes. If he didn't say no. La. If he said yes, what would happen? The man says, O Messenger of Allah, we only have enough fresh water for other things, not for wudu. Can we make wudu with seawater? If the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, yes, you can make wudu with seawater, then what would the ruling become? When somebody that's smart, dhaki, fatin. Fadl. La. Come again. He said, listen carefully to the hadith. The man said, we only carry a little bit of fresh water. Not a lot on our ships or our ship, okay? So if we use the fresh water from the well, the water that you can drink and cook with and eat with, if we use that water for wudu, for ghusl, then we won't have anything to drink and we'll go thirsty because we can't drink what? Seawater. The man asked, shall we make wudu with seawater? Is it permissible? It's salty, so on and so forth. If it may have a different color, can we use water from the sea for wudu? If the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, naam, what would have happened? Something bad would have happened. La. Said, oh, somebody sharp, smart, bright, brilliant. Fadl.
They would have died of thirst.
They would have died of thirst. La. They kept the fresh water. Fadl. La.
They don't smell like salt.
It won't smell like salt. La. If he would have said yes, make wudu with seawater, لَاقْتَصَرَ الْحُكْمُ عَلَى حَالِ الضُّرُورَةِ. لانحصر الحكم في حال ايش؟ الضرورة فقط. توضأ بماء البحر في حال ايش؟ الضيق، حال الضرورة، حال عدم وجدان. عرفت كيف؟ The Prophet ﷺ, he said, he didn't say yes. And if he did say yes, then that would have meant the ruling would have been specific to necessity. You can make wudu with seawater because you only have a little bit of fresh water. If you would have said yes, that would have happened. And that's not the ruling. And that's why the Prophet, he didn't say that. He said, he says the water of the sea is pure and clean. It purifies, it uplifts hadath and khabath, and its dead game is lawful to eat. In other words, you can make wudu with seawater even if you have a ton of fresh water. You can make ghusl with seawater even if you're on the coast, if you're on land, and you have the well, you have the fresh water, the spring water, you can still make wudu with what? Seawater. And then he gave them even more. He says, and the dead game, the fish that you don't catch, the things that you find dead, is permissible to eat. In other words, when you're traveling by sea, you're out for a very long time, it's a big possibility that you'll go short on food. Not right or wrong. Is it plausible? It's possibility that you may have a storm and your food gets thrown overboard. It's a possibility some of the food may go rotten. It's a possibility, it's a possibility. So as if the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, you travel by sea. So you need some extra things. And those extra things are the bounty of the sea. You may not have the ability to catch all of the fish. You may not have a net. You may not have a hook. You may not have a harpoon. But you may have the ability to get the dead fish. So the Prophet said he gave them things that weren't directly pertaining to their what? Question. And that's what Imam Bukhari just did. He started off by talking about who is a Sahabi, who isn't a Sahabi, and then he went on to talk about the actual fadl of the Sahaba. Everybody clear on this? And this is the case with many chapters in Sahih Bukhari, let alone other books. We got this? Everybody clear on this? Right. So that's the main lesson of the hadith of Abi Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Before we move on any further, we say we must now look, man, we have to dissect the hadith. We have to chop the hadith into 100 small pieces and take a fa'idah from each piece. A fa'idah from each piece. So, raise your hand if you have Sahih al-Bukhari in English in front of you. Who brought Sahih al-Bukhari to the masjid today? Who brought their books? You have it where? No, in English. It's Arabic. Ha. Who brought their books with them today? You have to come to work with your what? Your tools. You saw those hatchets in the store, right? You want to chop wood, you have to bring a what? Hatchet or an axe. Can't cut it with your hand, inshallah. Everybody clear on this? So if you speak English and a little bit of Arabic, next time there's a class on hadith, what should you do? Bring what? Bring both books. Bring the Arabic and also bring the English. Now I have here, the Arabic. I'm teaching the class. Yet and still, despite all that, I also have what? Come prepared. Always come what? Always come prepared. Everybody clear on this? Very important for the student knowledge. No matter what you're studying, to come prepared. Bring the necessary materials. And the best material to bring is sincerity, ikhlas. Humbleness, respect for your teacher, and respect for yourself, and respect for your classmate. That's the best tools to bring. And the willingness to learn. To bring a what? An empty cup. To bring an empty cup. Don't bring information to the class. Come as a learner, as a seeker of faith. Khayran inshallah. So look, man, what's the first benefit we get from this hadith? And the reason why I asked about English is because we translated the hadith first one time. Maybe you forgot, maybe you didn't know, maybe. But if you had the book in front of you in English, you can quickly refer back to it. So who can repeat to me what the hadith means in English, briefly, quickly, verbatim? What is the gist of the hadith? What's the hadith, ikhwan? Abu Sa'id narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said what? What happened? He says there will come a what? There will be a what? A people. A people. What will these people do? They go out for war. Good. What will happen? They will be asked. Do you have any companions among them? They will say? Yes. They will say yes. Then they will be what? They'll be given victory. Allah will give them what? Victory. Right. These people, they'll go away. Another army will come. Later on, they go away, they die, whatever the case may be. They will go out and fight in Allah's cause. What will happen? Quickly. They will be asked. Do you have anybody who was with the companions of the Messenger of Allah? It will be said, yes. What will happen? They will get victory. A third time will happen. It says, do you have anyone among you who was a student of the Sahaba? It will say yes, and what will happen? They will get victory. This is the gist of the hadith. Luqman, what's the first fa'idah from this hadith? Quickly. We mentioned that already. Ahsant. In this hadith, fadlu tabi'een. Ahsanta. In this hadith is the virtue of the what? Of the tabi'een. Tayyib. Next fa'idah. What's the next benefit? What do we get from this hadith? Quickly. Muhammad Amin. Sisters, no one participated today, unfortunately, along this time. What fa'idah do we get from this hadith? Follow. What do you learn from this hadith besides the virtue of the companions? The virtue of the tabi'een. When you want to study hadith, this is what they want to ask you. Huh? Come prepared. Tayyib. That's not it. It's something else. What's the next faida we take from this hadith? Fadl. فِيهِ فَضْلُ أَتْبَاعِ التَّابِعِينَ. Ahsanta. Is the virtue of the followers of the tabi'een. Ahsant. Tayyib. The next benefit from this hadith is what? Anybody got anything else from this one hadith? There's many points in this hadith. Fadl Luqman. Is this shows that min asbab al-nasr, from the reasons behind Muslims getting victory, is having people of knowledge and virtue among them. Ahsant. There's another faida as well. Wallahi, we can get 50 faida from this hadith. And this hadith shows what? Fadl. The superiority of having people of higher rank among you. Tayyib. Similar to the previous fadl. We mention that. Something else. There's more for white in this hadith. Huh? Okay, that's it. The Prophet's hadith only gives us 3 benefits. 4 benefits, that's it. The Prophet was a stingy man. Huh? What did Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala say? He says, what's the best deeds? The Prophet told him those 3 things, the best deeds. What did he say at the end of the narration? He said, وَلَوْ اسْتَزَدْتُهُ لَزَادَنِي. If I asked him for more, you would have done what? You've given me more. Alright, follow. What lessons do we take from this hadith? خير إن شاء الله. Let's move on to the next hadith. اقرأ.
قال إسحاق قال النضر أخبرنا شعبة عن أبي جمرة سمعت زهدا بن مضرب ابن مضرب سمعت عمران بن حسين رضي الله عنهما يقول قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم خير أمتي قرني ثم الذين يلونهم قال عمران فلا أدري أذكر بعد قرنه قرنين أو 3 ثم إن بعدكم قوما يشهدون ولا يستشهدون ويخونون ولا يؤتمنون وينذرون ولا يفون ويظهر فيهم السمن.
ويظهر فيهم السمن. انظر إلى فائدة هذه النسخة. شوف. قال ويخونون ولا يؤتمنون وينذرون أو ينذرون. طب تقول اثنين.
صح.
Okay. صح. طيب. أحسنت بارك الله فيك. Hadith number 2 of the chapter states, he says حدثني إسحاق قال حدثنا النضر قال أخبرنا شعبة عن أبي جمرة قال سمعت زهد بن مدرب قال سمعت عمران بن حسين رضي الله عنهما يقول قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم خير أمتي قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. قال عمران فلا أدري أذكر بعد قرنه قرنين أو 3 ثم إن بعدكم قوما يشهدون ولا يستشهدون ويخونون ولا يؤتمنون وينظرون ولا يفون ويظهر فيهم السمن. And it says, and for lack of time, we're not going to explain and expound the isnad a second time. We gave you the key. Who is Ishaq? Ishaq is what? هذه يسمى ايش؟ مبهم ولا مبهم؟ مهمل. إسحاق من؟ كم في الرواة اسمه إسحاق؟ كثير. أحسنت. كيف عرفت هذا؟ بأي طريقة؟ بالرقم. الأول ثاني بالرقم. أنا قلت بالرقم. أتفق هذا الرقم أول. رقم ثاني إيش؟ بشيوخ وتلاميذ. الرقم الثالث إيش؟ أحسنت. الرقم الرابع هكذا. فهمت الآن؟ هو شيخ البخاري. هذا يسمى هذا بالتلاميذ والشيوخ وهذا بالطبقة كذلك. طيب خير إن شاء الله. Moving forward. It is narrated by Imran ibn Hussein radiallahu anhuma that the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, خير أمتي قرني. He says, the best of my nation is my qarn. My qarn. The best of my followers is my qarn. What does the word qarn mean? How long? What is the generation? Ba'dain. We'll mention those things later on. And he says qarni, my qarn. The Messenger of Allah, he then said, ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. Then those who come after them. Those who do what? Come after them, those who succeed them. He then says, قال Imran said, فَلَا أَدْرِي. I'm not sure if the Messenger of Allah said this twice or 3 times. In other words, the Messenger of Allah, according to the first narration, he said the best of my nation are the Sahaba and the who? Best, that's it. The Sahaba and the Tabi'een. Imran said, I can't remember exactly whether the Messenger of Allah said the Sahaba and the Tabi'een, or the Sahaba, the Tabi'een, and then the Atba' Tabi'een. Everybody got this? Just be very careful when we say 3. He says, La adri, I can't remember. 2 or 3. The narration it then says, we didn't explain, just translating it. It says, then the Messenger of Allah, he said, after you will come a people that are not like you. فَخَلَفَ مِنْ بَعْدِهِمْ خَلْفٌ لَيْسُوا كَالْأَنْبِيَاءِ وَالرُّسُلِ فَخَلَفَ مِنْ بَعْدِهِمْ خَلْفٌ. Another people came that were different. And what will these people do? What will be the attributes and the characteristics of these people? He said, number 1, yes, he says what? They will give witness. يَشْهَدُونَ. They will bear witness. وَلَا يُسْتَشْهَدُونَ. Even though they weren't asked. No one asked you for your testimony, Akhi, but they'll give it. They'll be willing to give the testimony. He then says, وَيَخُونُونَ. They will be treacherous. وَلَا يُؤْتَمَنُونَ. They will not keep amana. They will not be trustworthy. They won't be reliable, righteous people. They will be backstabbing people, treacherous people. People that can't hold a simple cup of water if you ask them to do so without drinking it or stealing it. They will be treacherous. He then said, وَيَنْظُرُونَ فَلَا يَفُونَ. And they will make nadhr. They will make promises to Allah to do voluntary acts of ibadah. They will do another. يُفُونَ بِالنَّذْرِ. Allah says in the Quran, they fulfill their vows. Another is an act of ibadah that isn't mandatory, voluntary. And you say to Allah, 2 types of nadhr. The first type of nadhr, and you say, oh Allah, I promise to make hajj for your sake, even though I made hajj already. Oh Allah, I promise to slaughter a sheep for your sake. Oh Allah, I have the intention of fasting 3 months for your sake. And the second type of nadhr is when you ask Allah for something. Oh Allah, if you allow me to be successful, I'll fast an entire month. Oh Allah, if you allow me to pass this exam, I will give $1,000 in sadaqah. Oh Allah, if you cure my sick, ill grandmother, I swear I will give $500 in charity. Everybody understand this? Another mutlaq, another muqayyad. He says these people, they would not fulfill their vows. They make promises to Allah to do worship, and they would not fulfill them. He said, last but not least, وَيَظْهَرُ فِيهِمْ. He says, and obesity will be prevalent among them. Obesity will be prevalent among them. There will be a lot of people that are obese and highly overweight among this generation of people. Before we dissect the hadith Luqman, what is the main lesson from this hadith? Again, the virtues of Ashab Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The excellence of the companions of the Prophet. How did you get this? Where did you get this from? The hadith doesn't state my companions are virtuous. Where did you take this from? Okay. The list of shortcomings. La. No, that's a shortcoming. It's something before the shortcomings, which is what? No, la, before the 2. Anybody who's played baseball, you know that, the leadoff batter. His job is to do what? What does it mean to lead off? What does that mean, lead batter? What is your job to do? Hit a home run, hit a double, hit a triple. Still, what's your job? What's the shortest, closest base from home? First base, center. Then comes another batter, then a powerful batter. Then this person, he brings them home, the RBI, right? So you're starting off with the hadith, the first closest what? Point. Why say the generations? Why say the list of shortcomings when you can easily say what? Center. The best of my nation. Qarni. And this qarn, his generation, quote unquote, are the, it's a very important point here. Many people, when they go to Yastambit to take from the hadith, Yadhab Ba'id. And the Mahal Shahid is what? at the tip of your nose, but you have to be trained. Just like the lead batter is trained to do what? Bunt, get walked, to get on what? Get on base. Aham shay. If you can do more, that's better, but at least do what? Alright, wow. Everybody understand this? So the main lesson from this hadith is what? The virtue of the companions of the Messenger of Allah. Tayyib. Next question, what's your name, Akhi? Muhammad. Why did Imam al-Bukhari mention this hadith? And we learned it from the first hadith already. It's just a rerun. Run on. What's the purpose? Help others. Nah, that's not it. Why? Tafadhal. To remind us, perhaps.
You mentioned it the second time to make it clear.
Stronger, clearer, to put emphasis. If somebody punched you one time, it's not the same as somebody punching you 2 times. Right? Just in case the first punch didn't hurt, I want to make sure what? You're going to remember. Everybody understand this? Emphasis. And then he mentions the 3rd hadith, and the 4th hadith, and the 5th hadith, and the 6th hadith in one chapter. To do what? To prove his point. And it's a major lesson that you should learn as a student of knowledge. If you wish to teach someone, you're giving a khutbah, you're giving a lesson, let alone an argument and a debate, you have to do what? You have to bring your dalil. Solid, strong, irrefutable. And this is what you learn from the book of Imam al-Bukhari. Everybody learn this? There's some chapters Imam al-Bukhari may mention 20 hadiths to prove one of his chapters. 1 point from his madhab. Everybody understand this? So the talib al-ilm, he has to be adawa qawi. Qawi al-hujjah, qawi al-qana'. He has to be strong in his argument. And this is what Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala said when he spoke on the different disciplines of Islam. Those who seek lugha will be like this. Those who seek this science will be like that. He says, وَمَنْ طَلَبَ الْحَدِيثِ قَوِيَتْ حُجَّتُهُ. He says, and those who learn hadith, they will be very convincing in their arguments. They'll be strong in their proofs and their evidences. Khairan, inshallah. So that's the main lesson from the hadith. The next lesson from hadith is what? Fadal. Virtues of the companions. We mentioned that already. Virtue of who? What's next? Virtues of the tabi'i. Who's the tabi'i? What's the definition of a tabi'i? What's the definition of a tabi'i? Who is a tabi'i and who isn't? We took who the sahaba are. What makes a person a sahabi? What makes a person a tabi'i? Fadal. La. No. Fadal. La.
Whoever saw a sahabi,
Ahsant. He who meets a sahabi and actually listens to him and takes something from him, a little or a lot. Why do we make a difference? ليش فرقنا بين الثاني والأول؟ خليك ذكي. حاد. ليش ما سبب تفرقة؟ من رآه فقط مجرد رؤية، واشترطنا في الثاني أن يكون إيش؟ صاحبه ولزمه وسمع منه وتتلمذ عليه. لماذا؟ Why do we make a difference? Everybody pay close attention. This is very important. We said what? Anyone who sees the Rasul ﷺ is from what? Sahaba. Heard from the Prophet or not? Doesn't matter. Follow with him? Doesn't matter. Learn from him what?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. An hour, 5 minutes, a day, 5 years, what?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Everybody understand this? And then we said about the tabi'een, it says he cannot just see a companion. Rather, he has to see him and study and listen to him and be with him for some time. Why? Why is there difference?
there has to be a difference because it was different back then. It was called numerous.
Little close, little warm, huh? Say hot potato, cold potato. Little lukewarm, not hot. Little warm, not hot. We want something sukhuna yani. Hot. Anybody know? Why? It is very important for your aqeedah as a Muslim. For the sheer virtue of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was so special, so unique, so outstanding that the only thing you had to do was do what? And not even see him. Not even see. Because many of the Sahaba couldn't see with their physical eyes. They saw with their hearts clearly. But they couldn't see with their physical eyes. So those who met the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those who they sat with him, they walked with him, they met with him, or they looked at him even though they were physically what? Blind. That's not the case with the Sahaba because the Prophet was so special. Alayhi salatu wasalam. He was so unique and he was so mubarak. Allah gave him so many blessings. Is that the only thing you had to do was just be with him and you consider to be from his friends. Everybody understand this? You were from his what? From his friends. This virtue does not apply to the Sahaba. It does not apply to the Sahaba. Everybody understand this? So, nothing that a person can do after the Sahaba can be equal to what they did. Knowledge, jihad, hijrah, all of the righteous deeds cannot come close, or they can't come close to what the Sahaba did. هذه مسألة. تفضيل الصحابة على من أتى بعدهم هل بالخصوص بالأعيان أم بالمجموع؟ يعني كل صحابي أفضل من يعني كل فرد من التابعين ولا قرن صحابة بصفة العموم. فهمنا السؤال؟ فهمنا المسألة؟ أعيده. طيب لما نقول أفضل هذه الأمة بعد نبيها من صحابة، طيب يعني الصحابة هم خير وأفضل من كل التابعين، كل صحابي أفضل من كل تابعي، ولا الصحابة بنظرة عامة قرنهم أمتهم عهدهم وقتهم، وفي من التابعين من كان مجاهدا عالما منفقا كذا وكذا وكذا. هل هذا أفضل من اجتمع بالنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم دقيقة واحدة رآه رؤية؟ هذا هو السؤال. فهمت السؤال الآن؟ هذا هو إيش؟ هذا السؤال. This proves what? الأول على الأفراد, all of them were better because they actually sat with the Prophet. Remember, understand this? So to be a tabi'i, you cannot just be someone who did what? Who met a sahabi, but you have to be someone who did what? Everybody got this? Khair, inshallah. Let's move forward. The next fa'idah from this hadith is what? What other benefits from this hadith? La, the tabi'in are mentioned in this hadith. Just the tabi'in are mentioned in this narration. He says qarni, and he says what? Thumma alladhina yalunhum. That's it, just two. He didn't mention what? Three. Virtues of the followers. We mentioned this. What else? Follow. Nah, not questions. No yet. No questions. Not yet. Being careful with your narrative from the Prophet ﷺ. Something else. Tayyib. Something else though. More important. The next benefit we take from this hadith is the permissibility of doing what? Giving witness. The permissibility of giving a testimony. And also just the permissibility of seeking a witness. Seeking a what? Seeking a shaheed. Tayyib. Next fa'idah is what? Follow. The virtue of being trustworthy. And the dispraise of being what? Untrustworthy. If you're not trustworthy, then you are not upon the way of the Salaf Salih. Everybody understand this? You lie, you say I heard, I saw, and you didn't hear, and you didn't see. I witnessed, and you didn't witness. You're a false witness. If you're treacherous, if you don't keep the amana, I told you something, Yaqi, between me and you. I said, please keep this just between what? Me and you. The next morning, you spread it all over Twitter and Facebook. Muhammad ibn Munir said, keda, 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 keda. Regardless, even though I clearly asked him, it was what? Secret. He said, well, it doesn't matter whether it was secret or not. He's a deviant. Khalas. Look what he said. Look at his ideas. Look at his afkar. And then you claim that you're upon the way of the Sahaba. And I'm the deviant. Nah? You're following the son of a Salih, and I'm not. And this man doesn't realize that what did he just do? خان الأمانة. فكيف يكون على طريقة هؤلاء؟ ثم then it will come people who will do what? يشهدون ولا يستشهدون يخونون ولا يتمنون. Everybody understand this? So from the way of following the Sahaba Kiram is not rushing to say I heard and I saw. I heard and I saw. I heard and I saw. يشهدون ولا يستشهدون. They will run to give the testimony and they will not be asked for. In other words, the testimony is heavy. Getting someone's wealth taken, a man and a woman being separated and split up, someone's life being taken, that's serious. Talking about a Muslim's honor is serious. Why would you rush to do it? Why would you what? Rush to do it. It's something that you're going to be asked about in Yawm al-Qiyamah. Now, and also the virtue of having the amana and the dispraise of behaving what? Treacherously. Then the Prophet he says, وَيَنْظُرُونَ, he says, and they also give nazar. This part of the hadith proves the permissibility of doing what? Of making nazar. Even though he said, إِنَّ النَّظْرَ لَا يَأْتِ بِخَيْرٍ وَإِنَّمَا يُسْتَخْرَجُ بِهِ مِنَ الْبَخِيلِ. The Prophet he said, vows never bring good. Vows never bring good. But the vow is only used to take ibadah from someone that's stingy. Someone who's unwilling to do extra ibadah unless Allah what? Gives him something. Everybody understand this? The second type of nadar. As for the first type of nadar, then it isn't necessarily makruh, but it's obligatory for you to fulfill. If you promise to make a hajj, and then later on you don't have the money and this and that, that's a problem because you did what? You made it. It wasn't wajib upon you, but you made it mandatory upon yourself. But no matter what the case, it's still what? Permissible. Still what? Permissible. The only thing that the Prophet blamed the people for doing was what? Is not doing what? Not fulfilling. Sent. Not fulfilling the nadar. Everybody understand this? And then the Prophet ﷺ, he says, وَيَظْهَرُ فِيهِمُ السِّمَنَ or semen. He says, and the people will have widespread obesity. Why is it widespread obesity? Is it something wrong with a person being obese? Everyone has to be thin or in shape or fit. If a person is big, if a person is chubby, if a person is fat, as they say, is it a bad thing? I mean, I'm a sinner. I'm not following the Sahaba, or they're not medical conditions of the people, genetics, things like this. What's meant by this hadith is, after the tabi'een, will come a people who don't care, who have no trust, they're low, they're mean, and they're base. And from the things that prove this is that they eat and drink so much that they're devoted to the dunya. They're so devoted to the dunya that they do what? Aywa. It doesn't say that there's going to be one who's among them that's obese. Two people from among them that's what? Obese. It says وَيَظْهَرُ. If he says what? Widespread. So many people are going to be what? Large. Because there's going to be so much dunya. And perhaps the dunya comes from lying. Look, man. Perhaps the dunya comes from what? Lying. Making vows, not keeping them. Breaking one's trust. Everybody understand this? Everybody clear on this? So these are some of the different fawaid from this hadith. The main point is the virtue of the Sahaba al-Kiram radiyallahu anhu. Now I have a question. Adawa. ما معنى القرن؟ ما هو القرن؟ ما ضابط كلمة القرن؟ 100 سنة 50 سنة 30 سنة 20 سنة كل الصحابة كل التابعين ما المقصود بقرن؟ يقع يعني كثير من المنسوبين إلى العلم في الغلط في هذا الحديث. يقع كثير وكثير في خطأ فاضح لأنهم لا يفهمون معنى القرن. Does qarn mean generation? If you say that it means generation, when you speak English, you talk about English, a generation is how many years? Huh? How many years is a generation? 50? 100? 1,000 years is a generation? 10 years is a generation or decade. 500. خلاص. أيوة هذا من الأسباب. ومن الخطأ تحمل رأيك على الآخر بدون ضابط. هذا يسمى تحكم. أنت تتحكم على الناس. Everybody understand this? So what is a generation? Quote unquote, what is a qarn? Is it all of the Sahaba? When all of them die, then comes the tabi'een? Or is when most of the Sahaba pass and go away? Everybody understand this? Many people have a misunderstanding of this hadith. What is important is the Prophet ﷺ says, my qarn. In other words, all of those who did what? Who met me, who saw me, who studied with me, whom I taught, whom I fed and nourished. They were my tulab, my students. I raised them upon my teachings directly. Everybody understand this? And then one can say, perhaps, after most of them go away, not all of them, but most of them, the prominent major ones from among this generation, once they go, begins a what? A new qarn. And those are people that are Muslims, that are believers, that have knowledge and ibadah, but they didn't what? They didn't see me. They didn't meet me directly. And that begins another what? Qarn. It brings another what? Qarn, another generation. Whether it's 25 years, 35 years, al-muhim. فهمنا هذا? Very important part of the hadith. خير inshallah. Last but not least, when we talk about the tabi'een, does this mean that all of the tabi'een were upon khair? Kullu? All of them were salaf as-salih? Every last one of them? Huh? السؤال واضح أم غير واضح؟ طيب الجواب نعم أم لا؟ كلهم كل فرد من التابعين كلهم. طيب معلش, before we even go any further, when we say the tabi'een, that's one thing, and then we say asr al-tabi'een, qarn al-tabi'een. Even if he didn't meet and hear from the Sahaba, but he lived among them. And they are all called what? That generation is called the what? Or not. Another ibadah is what? The what? Sent. So, away the su'al. Kullu? Khayr inshallah. طيب. Al-Muhim. What we're going to do right now, bi-idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're going to stop. I want to leave some time for some mudakhalat, inshallah. Before the questions, maybe some other brothers want to give some fawaid, some sisters want to give some fawaid, and if not, at least nasta'in Allah, we seek Allah's help in taking some of the questions from the brothers and from the sisters. Bi-idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. Luqman, you want to channel? You gotta find someone, inshallah. Bi-idhnillah. I'm sure there are plenty of questions, and Allah knows best. Fine, we'll stop here. Are there any questions from the brothers, from the sisters, on the topic or off the topic? Now is the time. And if not, we say Jazakumullahu khairan. Any questions on or off the topic? Tfaddal. Says, were the tabi'een قال الانتباه شوف الأسئلة طيب خلاص طيب وبعدين بريك طيب شكرا. Question says, the tabi'een, were they during the Renaissance period? What do you mean by Renaissance? The time, what do you mean? What's Renaissance? Who's Renaissance? The Muslims Renaissance or Western Europe? We say no, they weren't during that time. But the word Renaissance, the concept of enlightenment, knowledge, renewal, getting rid of the bad and bringing in the new. Classic era, no doubt. The Islamic Renaissance, no? Wallahu a'lam, him, no. No. The Islamic, when was the Prophet born? In the common era. The common era, when was the Prophet born? 610 or 570? Which one?
570.
570. The Renaissance was in what century? What year? Over how many years later?
1400.
How many years later? 570 and 1500s. How many years later?
570. 800.
So the Tabi'een, they came after the Sahaba. The Prophet lived for how many years?
1000.
Everybody understand this?
Yeah.
And the Sahaba lived for years, so obviously they were very, very far from that era. Khayr inshallah. Wallahu a'lam. Clear inshallah? Alhamdulillah. Any other questions before we stop for break? Fadl. Any other questions on the topic? Fadl. Please, ikhwan, please. Jazakumullahu khairan. Jazakumullahu khairan. Fadl. I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Your brothers are not giving you enough respect. What? You're not giving him enough respect. Not me, not us, not everybody, but at least what? Hey, what? Follow.
What is about the 70?
What about the what? 70?
Yes.
What about 70?
So about the what are you talking about?
About the what?
You were asking some questions about
700? I don't understand the question. From the Sahaba from what? All over the world? Or from one place? From the Prophet? From the Prophet's name? How long did they live? That wasn't a question. You want to write it down if you like, Fogo? What did you say?
Brother, I have a question.
No, we still have a question here from my sister. I didn't get what she said. She was to write it down, so I don't know.
I don't know where it is.
Alright. Inshallah, we're waiting for you to get it out. Next question.
Is it true, like if you, let's say you're in a battlefield and you run away, is it true that you're not considered a believer?
Question says, is it true that if you're on the battlefield and you run away, you're not a true believer? Yes and no. Yes and no. If a person is fighting a lost cause and he has no immediate need to run, to rally with a group of believers, to set an ambush for your enemies, or in instance we may say which person is extremely outnumbered. Something like this. Okay? But in general, a person runs, he turns his back on the enemy. Then no, he's not a true believer. His iman is very low. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that his final abode will be hell. So it's a major sin to turn your back from the battlefield, as Allah tells us in the Quran. And from the second part of the answer, yes, he is a believer, whereas it doesn't mean he's a kafir. It doesn't mean he's left Islam. It doesn't mean that he's now an apostate. But his iman is low, and he made a major sin that he must repent. He must make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Can you say that I?
طيب ومن يولهم يومئذ دبره إلا متحرفا لقتال أو فقد باء ومأواه جهنم وبئس المصير. Chapter number 8, Allah says, O you who believe, when you meet the disbelievers, زحفا, when you meet them, when you clash, lock swords with them, فلا تولوهم الأدبار, don't turn your backs to them, don't cower, don't flee. ومن يولهم يومئذ دبره, and those who turn his back, for those who turn their backs, except for a person who's going to another group, except for someone who's making a trick in an ambush, فَقَدْ بَاءَ بِغَضَبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ, then Allah will be angry with him, and he will go to hell. In Surah Al-Anfal, in the 8th chapter. كثير اختصرنا واختصرنا. طيب. It says here, where is the Sahabis from around the world with the Prophet? That's what I thought that she said the first time. We say most of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum were from the local region of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not all of them, but most of them. Mecca, the surrounding areas of Mecca, Ta'if, and things like this. Some of the Sahaba that came from Medina. Some of the Sahaba that came from Abyssinia. Some of the Sahaba that came from other parts of the world. But most of them were from the direct locale of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. In brief. Any other questions before we stop? Fadl. Question says, what is your origin? Where are you from? I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Born and raised. I currently live in New York City. As far as, no, not New Jersey. Philadelphia. Tayyib? Wallahu a'lam. Khairan inshallah. Perhaps you mean, are you from like another country or something? My parents? Tayyib. Next question.
Is it haram if you and a group of Muslims, like back then at the Nabi's time, when Nabi Muhammad was alive, is it haram if you just ambush random kuffars in the middle of the night and they're asleep?
To ambush random kuffar?
Yeah, and they didn't harm you?
Type. Question says, Is it haram for a group of believers? Everybody listen please. Is it haram to ambush the kuffar, random kuffar armies? We say, if you're fighting the kuffar, fi sabilillah, in the cause of Allah, and it's jihad fi sabilillah, and you're on the battlefield, there is no contract, there is no peace agreement, there is no ceasefire. There's a state of war that exists between you and them. And they're your enemies, open playing field. Just like when you box, the referee, he tells you, protect yourself what? Protect yourself when? What? What does the referee say? What does the referee say when you box? Protect yourself and when?
At all times.
At all times. But when the bell rings, what? You can't punch. But when the bell rings, you're fighting somebody that is your opponent. And you can punch them whether they're looking or not. Whether they're paying attention or not. Whether their hands are up or what? Or not. Why? Because that's your opponent at that time. But the moment the bell stops and you're not fighting that person, then it is dirty for you to hit them when they're not looking or beneath the belt. But as long as they're your enemy and it's fair war, do what? Well, as long as it's permissible. As long as it's what? Permissible. Torturing people, doing things like this, that's haram. Fighting, that is not haram. If that person is your enemy, then you do what? وَلْيَجِدُوا فِيكُمْ معلش أنا أحب أخوف الناس بس يعني أمانة نجيب على السؤال لا يجوز يعني نتنكب الأسئلة صعبة محرجة شوي لا ما يصير هذا صح العداوة لكن نجيب إن شاء الله بأسلوب طيب والله أعلم clear أخي طيب next question تفضل you have questions online it's not for work with mine my account is the actual thing yeah anybody's account تفضل
Like how he said about like you're in battle and they retreat. They leave because
if someone is in battle one question at a time I'll get there inshallah the question says your enemy they're fighting you and they turn their backs. Is it permissible to fight them? We say it all depends. Why are they turning their backs? Are they submit? Fadl?
Because a lot of their soldiers died.
We say they're coward. It all depends. It may be a time in which it may be best to show them mercy. Perhaps they'll accept Islam. When they saw the fact that the Muslims did what? Gave them mercy. They were clearly defeated. I didn't say can't. I said perhaps best.
No, like, I mean, like, you're both fighting, right? But then, like...
Question is clear. They run away. Is it permitted for him to? Can you shoot somebody in their back? That's the question. Clear. Question is very clear.
So you can't and can.
No, and I never said that you can't.
So you can?
I never said that you cannot. I said in warfare there are rules and there are principles. Everybody understand this? In all ways of life, let alone in religions. And from those principles is that sometimes you show mercy to your enemy and sometimes you don't. Because all warfare is based off of deception. And somebody may turn their backs and those are the same people that come later on to kill you and fight you. So this is going to be something that goes back to the leader's decision, the imam. He says, continue, you continue. He says, let them go, let them run, let them cower. Then you have to do what? Listen to your imam. But that does not mean that it's haram because it's a battlefield. Just like if you were boxing somebody, the same example, once again, it's in the middle of the ring. A person, he turns his back on you. Can you punch him? Can you swing on him? You put your gloves down and he turns around and he sneaks you. Everybody understand this? Wallahu ta'ala alam. Hopefully that's clear, inshallah. Wallahu alam. Sallallahu sallam wa barak. Ala abdihi wa rasulihi nabina Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum. Alright, we're going to have some more juice and cookies for everybody, inshallah. What I want you guys to do is
You can stay in the musalla and we will pass out the juice and cookies, inshallah. So we don't want you wandering around. If you need to get up, use the bathroom, use the bathroom. If you need to get up, get some water, get some water. But you cannot leave the musalla. You can mingle around, walk around the musalla, get up and stretch. That's fine. But please don't leave the musalla. If you're outside the musalla, you're not getting juice. Alright? Abdullah.